If we merge some light year in a titanic quaking collision, perhaps we both see something new.
What most societies, to a greater or lesser extent, do day to day, week to week. We have a system based on law. We debate laws. We have arguments about laws. Obviously, we have, religious and other inputs into laws, but we arrive at laws we recognise, or at least before the era of Trump, we recognise the rule of law. That we see that other societies that respect the rule of law, greater or less than ours, tend to be better or worse than ours. No God needed, and we will over time arrive, we hope, at more civilized, more just, more fair, better ways of organizing ourselves. But no God needed. So this is sort of where I've got to, But realizing that other people are in, they're in other places, and if we can agree on values, then that's a great place to be, even if we're not going to agree on the beliefs that shape our values.
Yeah. And I feel like, for me, like, the hierarchical God at the top of the seventh heaven up there, like, that doesn't exist. And so I'm with you on that. And so where my posture has been more of one of learning what the reality that we do have is. And to me, a big part of that is listening to scientists, learning from people who know what they're talking about, listening to people who have studied the evolution of human consciousness and how that has happened. People used to believe in blood sacrifice all around the world. Could that possibly have anything to do with the conversation in the Bible? And basically just realize, I'm not gonna get all this figured out, but I'm gonna learn to love myself, and I'm gonna learn to love others, and learn from others. And and I think, could there be a divine being? I don't think that is provable in an apologetics sense that a lot of Christians want to try to prove. I would say, if there's a God, it would be some kind of a very different being than the guy at the top of the hierarchy. But that's a question that I can't fully dive into at this point. I'm here to learn to love myself and learn to love my neighbor. And if there's a God worth being present with, I think that God would be there in that love for one another. And maybe I'll turn out to be wrong.
Well, we may never know.
You never know.
So we won't know. I mean, so two other things that. So one of the things that there are consequences to beliefs, and then jettisoning beliefs. So I say rather sort of lightheartedly, some of my best friends are Christians, because equally some of them have they've sort of quietly ditch me because they can't cope with this type of conversation. But I think I'd sort of jokingly, people, I say, well, what happened, and I say, I suddenly noticed that Jesus wasn't returning my calls. One of the big things that you do have to cope with if you're going down the road that I've gone down is if this is the one life, then on the plus side, you value it even more. But the comfort that Christianity and other religious beliefs provide of, there is an afterlife and we'll be reunited with our loved ones, etc., etc. I don't think that's true any longer. And of course, that's very traumatic. I think it's not easy to actually, if you come to the position, I say not realization because that would be too much of a claim, but if you come to the position that the comfort you got from an afterlife and thinking that not in my own strength, but I'm going to make the grade, as it were, because of this savior who's going to take care of everything I've done wrong because I've invested in that position. I mean, that is actually that is quite difficult. I've found that quite difficult to process. Nevertheless, for me, it was a part of just being totally honest about the consequences of no longer thinking or believing in a deity. So that's there are traumas, but in the same way that I suppose if I'd never been indoctrinated into the idea that there is an afterlife and we'll all meet up and be bored to death for eternity,
singing songs,
strumming harps, or really bad choruses, with repetitive lines, then if I hadn't been sort of sucked down that rabbit hole, then it wouldn't have been a rabbit hole from which I'd have had to crawl out. But and then the other thing is that on the basis of what I now believe, that I would allow the possibility, not that there's a sort of an interventionist deity as is described in some detail in the Bible, but there is the possibility of a deist universe in which one or more gods have sort of like set the ball rolling and then just step back and say,
see what happens.
Just get on with it, and no need to worship. I mean, I do remember way back in school days, my best buddy at school, who was not a believer. It was a church school of a school which was several hundred years older than the United States. And one of its old boys was William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania. Oh, wow. But he said, because I was involved in church choirs and all the rest of it, and he said he just didn't understand. If I was God, why would I want people worshipping me all day long? And that's actually it's quite a good question, actually.
Yeah, especially if like 98% of them are in hell.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the 2% are they're fine, either fine with that or they've forgotten about those other people even existed, and you're just there listening to their songs, knowing their ignorance. Like, at some point that falls apart.
Yeah.